I wasn't looking for a life-altering secret. I was simply looking for rosewood red. It was a specific, wax-scented tube of lipstick that had survived 3 years of late-night galas and anniversary dinners. The color was discontinued now, impossible to replace, and I treasured it like a small rebellion against time. I was certain I had tucked it into the glove box of Julian's charcoal gray Jaguar after our last fundraiser. The memory was vivid, checking my reflection in the visor mirror, sliding the tube into that velvet-lined compartment, Julian's hand warm on my knee as he navigated the winding roads back to our estate. That warmth felt like a lifetime ago now. The garage was silent except for the ambient hum of the climate control system. Julian was in the city, meeting with investors, or so he claimed. I had the afternoon to myself, a rare occurrence in our carefully choreographed life. Finding the lipstick should have taken 30 seconds. My fingers probed the deep corners of the glove compartment, pushing past insurance documents and a forgotten pair of sunglasses. The smooth plastic of a cosmetic tube eluded me. Instead, my nail caught on something unexpected, a hidden seam in the leather lining. I paused, my heart rate unchanged. In my line of work, hidden compartments were not unusual. I designed security systems for people who hid things. But finding one in my husband's car, one I had never known about, sent a cold prickle across my scalp. I pulled. The resistance was minimal, almost eager, as if the compartment had been waiting for discovery. A false panel clicked open with a sound like a whispered confession. Behind it lay a small brass cylinder, heavy and ornate. It looked like an antique match case, the kind a Victorian gentleman might carry. The patina suggested age, but the hinges were well-oiled, recently used. I lifted it carefully, feeling its unexpected weight. Inside, wrapped in a square of midnight blue silk, was a narrow strip of parchment. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind used for documents meant to last. I unfolded it with steady hands, my architect's precision keeping the tremor from my fingers. 24 words stared back at me. Random, disconnected, meaningless to anyone who did not understand what they represented. But I understood immediately. This was a recovery seed phrase for a cryptocurrency cold storage wallet. In the right hands, these words were a key to a digital vault. In the wrong hands, they were evidence of something hidden. My mouth went dry, but I kept reading. Beneath the parchment was a folded document on heavy bond paper. The letterhead belonged to a private clinic in Switzerland, a facility I recognized from whispered conversations at industry parties. It was the kind of place where inconvenient relatives disappeared under the guise of mental health treatment. The rich sent their embarrassments there, their addicts and their eccentrics, their wives who asked too many questions. The words on that paper did not break my heart. They incinerated my entire world. It was a letter of intent, a formal document outlining a plan to have me medically committed for early-onset psychological instability. The diagnosis was detailed, the symptoms listed with clinical precision: memory lapses, paranoid episodes, emotional volatility. A doctor I had never met had signed his name at the bottom, certifying my incapacity. But that was not the worst of it. The transfer of my family's $50 million estate was scheduled to trigger the moment my signature was deemed legally void by reason of mental incompetence. Every asset my grandfather had built, every patent my father had protected, every dollar I had multiplied through my own relentless work, all of it would flow into Julian's control the instant I was declared unfit. At the bottom of the document, beneath the official signatures and legal language, was a handwritten note. I recognized Julian's elegant script immediately, the same handwriting that had penned love letters and birthday cards for 12 years. The villa in Marbella is ready. Serafina, just 1 more week until the accident at the gala. Then she's gone and we are free. The garage felt like a tomb. The Jaguar's sleek lines suddenly resembled a coffin. The climate control hummed its indifferent song while my entire understanding of reality collapsed and reformed into something sharper, something dangerous. Julian was not just my husband of 12 years. He was not the charming partner who had built an empire beside me. He was a scavenger who had been measuring me for a shroud while I slept beside him. He had looked at my life, my inheritance, my company, my sanity, and seen nothing but resources to extract. And Serafina. The name burned in my mind. I knew exactly who she was. I had hired her myself, brought her into our company, into our home. I had mentored her, shared my secrets with her, treated her like the daughter I never had. While I was teaching her to build digital fortresses, she was learning to tear mine down. I sat in that garage for exactly 4 minutes. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not call my lawyer or my therapist or my sister in Connecticut. Instead, I did what I had done every day for the past 20 years when faced with a complex problem. I analyzed. I photographed the seed phrase with my phone, ensuring perfect clarity. I memorized the 24 words, burning them into my brain. Then I replaced the parchment exactly as I had found it, smoothed the silk, closed the brass cylinder, and pressed the false panel back into place until it clicked. The glove compartment looked undisturbed. Julian would never know I had found his secrets. I walked back into our mansion with steady steps. I sat at my vanity and looked at my reflection, the woman Julian thought was a failing mind, a broken system waiting to crash. My eyes were clear. My hands were still. I had 7 days until our 12th anniversary gala. 7 days until Julian planned to destroy me in front of everyone we knew. 7 days to dismantle 12 years of partnership, move 40 years of family wealth, and ensure that when Julian pulled the trigger on his plan, the gun would explode in his hand. I opened my laptop and began to code. What Julian didn't know was that I built the systems he thought he controlled, and I was about to remind him exactly who wrote the source code. To understand how a marriage becomes a murder plot, you have to understand who we were before the mask slipped. I am Eleanor Vance, the last surviving heir of the Vance technology dynasty. My grandfather built the first commercial encryption systems in the 1970s. My father expanded the empire into digital security. By the time I took control at 28, Vanguard Security Systems protected the secrets of Fortune 500 companies, foreign governments, and individuals whose net worth exceeded the GDP of small nations. I was never meant to be the face of the company. I was the architect, the builder, the one who understood that true security was not about walls, but about anticipating every possible breach. I spent my career constructing digital fortresses for the world's most paranoid billionaires. I knew how people hid things, how they protected things, and most importantly, how they stole things. Julian Ashworth entered my life at a conference in Geneva. He was everything I was not, charming, polished, effortlessly social. Where I saw systems and patterns, he saw people and opportunities. He could walk into a room of skeptical investors and leave with their complete trust and a signed contract. He became my chief operating officer, then my partner, then my husband. For years, I believed we were the perfect balance. I built the locks. He held the keys. We were the power couple of the tech finance circuit, featured in magazine profiles and invited to every significant gathering. Our wedding was covered by 3 publications. Our home was photographed for architectural digests. I thought I was happy. I thought he loved me. The gaslighting began so gradually that I cannot pinpoint its origin. Perhaps it started in year 8, when Julian mentioned that I had forgotten our dinner reservation. I was certain I had made it, but when I called the restaurant, they had no record. Julian showed me a confirmation email, one I did not remember receiving, proving my mistake. "It's nothing, darling," he said, his voice warm with concern. "We all forget things sometimes." Then it was the car keys. I always placed them on the hook by the garage door. Always. But they began appearing in strange locations, the bathroom drawer, the kitchen cabinet, once inside my own shoe. Julian would find them, smiling gently, suggesting that perhaps I was working too hard. Then came the calendar. Appointments I knew I had scheduled would vanish from my phone. Meetings I was certain about would be mysteriously absent. Julian would show me the digital records, his brow furrowed with worry. "Maybe you should see someone," he suggested one evening, his hand covering mine. "Just to talk. I'm worried about you, Eleanor." I began to doubt myself. That was the poison of it. I started keeping paper records, then second-guessing those too. Was I losing my mind? Was the stress of running Vanguard finally cracking my carefully constructed stability? I saw a therapist, one Julian recommended, I now realize, and discussed my memory issues in sessions that were probably reported back to him in detail. For 18 months, Julian built his case. He collected evidence of my decline, emails documenting my confusion, testimonies from colleagues about my erratic behavior, medical records suggesting early cognitive impairment. He was patient, methodical, thorough. He was preparing the world and the courts to believe that Eleanor Vance was losing her brilliant mind. And then there was Serafina Cole. I hired her myself 2 years ago. She was 29, brilliant, ambitious, everything I valued in young talent. Her resume was impressive, her references glowing, her interview performance flawless. She reminded me of myself at that age, hungry and driven and unafraid of complexity. I took her under my wing. I shared techniques I had never documented, showed her back doors in our own systems, trusted her with access that even Julian did not possess. I saw her as a protege, perhaps even a successor. I invited her to our home for dinner, introduced her to our social circle, defended her when senior staff questioned her rapid advancement. What I did not see was the way Julian's eyes followed her across the room. What I did not notice were the late meetings that ran longer than necessary, the encrypted messages on platforms I had taught her to use. While I was building her career, she was building a future with my husband, and it was a future that did not include me. Serafina was not just a mistress. When I began investigating after finding the brass cylinder, I discovered her real history. She was a ghost who moved through companies like a virus, attaching herself to vulnerable points and extracting value before disappearing. 3 previous employers had experienced mysterious financial irregularities after her departure. None could prove anything. She was too careful, too clean. Julian thought he was using her to access my money. She was using him to access Vanguard systems, codes, and protocols worth far more than my inheritance on the black market. They were 2 predators who had found each other, each believing they were the one holding the leash. The night I found the documents, I lay beside Julian in our bed and watched him sleep. His face was peaceful, handsome, familiar. For a moment, I remembered the man who had proposed under the stars in Tuscany, who had held my hand at my father's funeral, who had whispered promises into the darkness of our first apartment before the money and the mansions. Where did that man go? Or had he never existed at all? I felt the grief rise like a wave, threatening to pull me under. I wanted to wake him, to demand answers, to understand how 12 years of shared life could lead to a document authorizing my imprisonment. Was our entire marriage a performance? Had he ever loved me, even briefly? But then I remembered the handwritten note. Then she's gone and we are free. He did not just want to leave me. He did not just want my money. He wanted to lock me in a psychiatric facility where I would be drugged and silenced, unable to reveal his embezzlements, unable to defend myself, unable to ever reclaim what was mine. The grief did not disappear. It transformed. It became something colder, sharper, more useful. Julian thought he was the hunter, watching a wounded deer stumble toward a trap. He had no idea that I had just found his map, and I was about to rewrite the destination. By morning, I had a plan. By week's end, Julian would learn the true cost of underestimating the woman who designed the very systems he thought he controlled. The week before my scheduled destruction became a masterclass in psychological warfare, with myself as both general and ghost. 7 days. 168 hours to dismantle a conspiracy, redirect a fortune, and transform from victim to victor without raising a single alarm. The challenge would have been impossible for anyone who did not understand systems the way I understood them. But Julian had spent 12 years underestimating my capabilities. He was about to receive his education. Day 1, I played my role to perfection. I emerged from our bedroom with slightly disheveled hair, a calculated choice. At breakfast, I paused mid-sentence, frowning, pretending to lose my train of thought. Julian's eyes flickered with something I now recognized as anticipation rather than concern. "Are you all right, darling?" he asked, his voice smooth as silk over broken glass. "I'm fine," I said, letting uncertainty creep into my tone. Just tired. What day is it again? I watched the predatory glint sharpen in his gaze. He thought he was winning. He was so blinded by his own arrogance that he could not see the trap forming around him. While performing instability in public, I worked with surgical precision in private. Using my administrative God mode access to Vanguard systems, I shadowed Julian's every digital movement. I watched him transfer small test amounts from our corporate liquid assets into his secret cryptocurrency wallet. I observed the patterns, mapped the pathways, understood his methodology. I did not stop him. Instead, I helped him in ways he would never detect. But then I remembered the handwritten note. Then she's gone and we are free. He did not just want to leave me. He did not just want my money. He wanted to lock me in a psychiatric facility where I would be drugged and silenced, unable to reveal his embezzlements, unable to defend myself, unable to ever reclaim what was mine. The grief did not disappear. It transformed. It became something colder, sharper, more useful. Julian thought he was the hunter, watching a wounded deer stumble toward a trap. He had no idea that I had just found his map, and I was about to rewrite the destination. By morning, I had a plan. By week's end, Julian would learn the true cost of underestimating the woman who designed the very systems he thought he controlled. I created a mirror system, a digital hall of mirrors that reflected exactly what Julian expected to see. When he checked his secret wallet, he saw the balance growing, 10 million, 20 million, eventually reaching $60 million. The numbers were real. The location was not. That money was not sitting in a Marbella-bound wallet. It was being routed through a series of smart contracts I had designed in those first sleepless hours after my discovery. The funds existed in a temporary escrow that required 2 specific conditions for release: the 24-word recovery phrase and a biometric verification signal from the Vanguard mainframe. Julian had the words. He did not have the biometric key, and he never would. Day 3 brought an unexpected obstacle. Serafina appeared at my office, her smile bright with false warmth, requesting access to the quarterly security audit files. She claimed Julian had authorized the request. Perhaps he had. But I saw the hunger beneath her professional mask. She wanted more than financial records. She wanted the source code for Vanguard's most classified protocols. I gave her exactly what she asked for, modified with invisible trackers that would log her every keystroke. Then I smiled and invited her to the anniversary gala. It would mean so much to have you there, I said, watching her carefully. You've become like family to us. Her composure flickered for just a moment. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Eleanor. No, I thought. I imagine you wouldn't. Day 4 was dedicated to the federal authorities. I had connections everywhere, a benefit of spending decades protecting powerful people's secrets. 2 phone calls secured a meeting with agents from the SEC and FBI who had been investigating cryptocurrency fraud for years. I presented my evidence: the forged medical documents, the unauthorized fund transfers, the conspiracy to commit unlawful detention. They were skeptical at first. Eleanor Vance, approaching them with claims that her husband was planning to have her committed and steal her fortune, it sounded like paranoia. But the data was irrefutable. The digital trails I had mapped painted a picture so clear that even the most cautious investigators could not deny it. We'll need more, the lead agent said. Something definitive. A confession or clear evidence of intent. You'll have it, I promised. At the gala. Saturday night. They agreed to position agents at the event, disguised as security staff and catering employees. If Julian incriminated himself publicly, they would move immediately. Day 5 brought the hardest moment of that entire week. I sat in our library past midnight, watching Julian sleep on the leather sofa. He had fallen asleep reading, or pretending to read, a biography of some tech mogul he admired. His face was relaxed, almost boyish in the lamplight. For one terrible moment, I saw the man I had married. The man who had made me laugh, who had held me during thunderstorms, who had once seemed like the missing piece of my complicated life. Why wasn't this enough? The question screamed through my mind. Why did you need to destroy me to have her? Was it always about the money? Was there ever a single moment when you looked at me and saw something worth keeping? The grief I had been suppressing broke through my defenses. I let myself feel it, the betrayal, the humiliation, the wasted years. I mourned the future we would never have, the trust that could never be rebuilt, the love that had apparently never existed except in my own imagination. Then I remembered the Swiss clinic, the drugged compliance, the locked doors and barred windows where inconvenient wives vanished into chemical fog. Julian did not just want to leave me, he wanted to erase me. The grief hardened into something more useful. Day 6, I finalized the technical preparations. I configured the gala's audio-visual systems to accept remote commands from my smartwatch. I prepared the evidence presentation, carefully sequenced for maximum impact. Financial records first, then the medical fraud, then the video footage I had captured from hidden cameras in my own office. Cameras Julian and Serafina had never thought to look for. I also made one final addition to the smart contracts holding Julian's stolen funds. When the seed phrase was entered, the system would not release the money to his Marbella account. Instead, it would automatically generate a detailed confession using Julian's own digital signature and file it simultaneously with the IRS, the SEC, and the FBI. He would not just lose the money. He would turn himself in. Day 7 dawned clear and cold. I selected my dress, crimson silk, the color of warnings unheeded, and applied my makeup with steady hands. Julian watched me from the doorway, his expression soft with manufactured affection. "You look beautiful," he said. "Are you ready for tonight?" "More than you know," I replied. "This will be a gala no one forgets." He smiled, interpreting my words as further evidence of my unraveling mind. He saw a confused woman heading toward her own destruction. He had no idea he was looking at his executioner. The stage was set. The players were in position. And the woman Julian Ashworth had dismissed as a failing system was about to execute the most elegant code of her career. Continue to part 4 to witness the night everything changed, and the moment a predator learned he had always been the prey. The ballroom of the Pierre Hotel glittered like a jewel box filled with vipers, and I was about to open the lid. 700 guests filled the grand space, their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos creating a landscape of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across faces I had known for decades, investors, competitors, politicians, and the endless parade of social climbers who orbited the truly powerful like moths around flame. Julian was in his element. His tuxedo cost more than most families earned in a month, and he wore it with the easy confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. His hand rested on my waist with possessive familiarity as he guided me through the crowd, introducing me to Dr. Marcus Thorne, the corrupt physician who had signed my commitment papers without ever meeting me. "Eleanor, this is Dr. Thorne. He specializes in stress-related cognitive conditions," Julian said smoothly. "I thought you might find his work interesting." Thorne extended his hand, his smile professionally warm. He was here to witness my breakdown, to provide medical authority for my immediate detention. I shook his hand and committed his face to memory. "Fascinating field," I said. "I look forward to discussing it after my speech." Julian's eyes flickered with something, nervousness, perhaps, or simply anticipation. He leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "You're doing so well, darling. Just a few more hours, and we can go home and rest. Forever." "I'm looking forward to it, Julian," I replied, sipping my champagne. "More than you know." At 9:45, the event coordinator approached to confirm my speech timing. The plan, as Julian had orchestrated it, called for me to take the stage at 10 o'clock for our anniversary address. Partway through, I was supposed to become confused, disoriented, visibly unstable. Dr. Thorne would intervene for my own safety. I would be escorted out, sedated, and transported to a private facility before anyone could question what was happening. By morning, Eleanor Vance would be legally incapacitated, and Julian Ashworth would control everything. I checked my smartwatch, 9:58. The federal agents I had briefed were positioned throughout the room, 2 near the main entrance, 1 by the service corridor, 2 more disguised as waitstaff circulating with champagne. They were waiting for my signal. Serafina stood in the front row, her emerald dress catching the light as she shifted with barely concealed anticipation. She thought she was about to witness the beginning of her new life. She was about to witness the end of everything she had schemed for. At 10 o'clock precisely, I took the stage. The microphone hummed to life as I approached the podium. The crowd quieted, faces turning upward with polite attention. Julian positioned himself to my left, ready to catch me when I collapsed. His expression was a masterpiece of concerned devotion. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady and clear. 12 years of marriage is a significant milestone. It's enough time to build an empire. And it's enough time to discover that your empire is built on sand. Julian's smile faltered slightly. This was not the confused mumbling he had expected. "Tonight," I continued, "I am announcing a major shift for Vanguard security systems. We are launching a new transparency protocol. In fact, the first audit is happening right now." I tapped a command sequence on my smartwatch. Behind me, the massive projection screen, intended to display a montage of our happy years together, flickered to life. It did not show photographs. The first slide displayed bank statements, hidden accounts, unexplained transfers, a systematic pattern of embezzlement spanning 8 years. The numbers were damning: $60 million redirected from Vanguard's corporate accounts into cryptocurrency wallets tied to Julian's private keys. The second slide showed the forged medical documents, my commitment papers, signed by a doctor who had never examined me, diagnosing conditions I did not have, authorizing my detention at a facility known for making inconvenient people disappear. The third slide froze Julian where he stood. High-definition video footage filled the screen, security camera recordings from my own office, captured by systems Julian had never known existed. The footage showed him and Serafina in intimate conversation, their words picked up by microphones I had installed months ago for exactly this purpose. Once she's committed, the transfer is automatic, Julian's recorded voice echoed through the ballroom speakers. $60 million in crypto, the estate, the company shares, all of it flows to me as her designated medical guardian. And then, Serafina's voice asked, "And then we disappear. Marbella, the villa is ready. By the time anyone realizes what happened, we'll be untouchable. What about Eleanor? She won't just accept this." Julian's recorded laugh was cold, contemptuous. "She won't have a choice. The drugs they use at that clinic, she won't remember her own name, let alone try to fight back. 6 months, maybe a year, and she'll be a vegetable. Tragic accident. Unexpected complications. These things happen." The ballroom fell absolutely silent. 700 people stared at the screen, then at Julian, their expressions ranging from shock to horror to the particular disgust reserved for predators exposed in public. Julian's face had gone gray. He lunged toward the stage, reaching for the laptop controlling the presentation. "This is a hack," he shouted, his voice cracking. "She's having an episode. Someone help her, she's not well." But no one moved to help him. The evidence was too clear, his recorded voice too unmistakable. "The 24-word recovery phrase," I said, my voice cutting through his protests. "The one you thought was the key to my fortune. You entered it this morning, didn't you? You authorized what you believed was the final transfer." Julian froze, his face cycling through confusion, fear, and dawning realization. "You didn't move $60 million to a private wallet in Marbella," I continued. "You just authorized a voluntary confession and restitution payment to the Internal Revenue Service and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Every transaction, every forged document, every email discussing my illegal detention, all of it, filed under your own digital signature." I stepped down from the podium, approaching him slowly. "You didn't steal my money, Julian. You used your own credentials to turn yourself in." Serafina bolted for the exit, her heels clicking frantically against the marble floor. She made it exactly 12 steps before 2 agents in dark suits intercepted her. Julian stared at me with an expression I had never seen before, the look of a man who had just realized that everything he believed about his victim was catastrophically wrong. You ruined us," he whispered, the microphone catching his broken voice. "No, Julian," I replied. "I performed a system restore. The aftermath unfolded with clinical precision. Julian was handcuffed on the ballroom floor, while 700 witnesses watched in stunned silence. Dr. Thorne, confronted by federal agents, collapsed in minutes, revealing himself as a disgraced medical student with a history of prescription fraud and forged credentials. He gave up Julian as the conspiracy's architect in exchange for a reduced sentence. Serafina's claim of coerced involvement evaporated when agents searched her apartment and found backup drives containing years of correspondence. Her careful documentation of previous cons, her plans for Vanguard's source code, her own scheme to eventually eliminate Julian once she no longer needed him. The divorce was finalized 8 weeks later. I did not take a single cent of Julian's personal money. I did not need to. I kept my inheritance, my company, and my sanity. I watched from my balcony as the Jaguar was towed away, sold at government auction to compensate the investors Julian had defrauded. People ask me if I feel guilty for the cruelty of public exposure. They wonder if a private confrontation might have been kinder, more dignified. I tell them this: when someone tries to steal your life, your sanity, and your future, when they plan to lock you in a pharmaceutical prison and watch you fade into drugged oblivion, the only cruelty is letting them succeed. Julian thought he was the hunter because he possessed a list of words. He spent 12 years believing I was a system he could manipulate, a program he could corrupt, a problem he could delete. He forgot that in my world, words are just data, and data can always be rewritten. Some nights, I still wake reaching for the other side of the bed. The phantom presence of the man I thought I married lingers like a bruise that refuses to heal. I grieve not for Julian as he truly was, but for the version of him I invented, the partner who existed only in my hopeful imagination. That grief is the price of survival. I pay it willingly. The brass cylinder sits on my desk now, empty and hollow. I keep it as a reminder that the most dangerous threats often hide in the places we trust most completely. I finally found that rosewood red lipstick, by the way. It was under the passenger seat of the Jaguar all along, waiting patiently while chaos unfolded around it. I wore it the day I signed the divorce papers. It felt like closing a chapter. It felt like victory. It felt like me. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that underestimating quiet strength is always a dangerous mistake. And remember, the person who builds the system always knows its secrets better than the person who merely uses it. Follow for more stories of betrayal, redemption, and the extraordinary resilience of those who refuse to become victims.